you're doing a kegel exercise, you are clenching the same muscles that are being clenched during orgasm. So if you remember back to your last orgasm, today, yesterday, or whatever, and you remember having like almost like a pulse feeling of something being clenched and pulled up, that's your pelvic floor muscle. So when you're doing a kegel exercise, that same muscle is being engaged.
Welcome to Honey Do Me, a podcast that goes into the bedroom and beyond, hosted by Emma Norman
and Cass Anderson. Here at Honey Do Me, we don't have all the answers, so we chat with experts, educators, and badass changemakers to get them.
We are here to remind our listeners and ourselves that what we're going through is normal, that we are worthy of love and pleasure,
and that we are all in this together. So tell us, honey, how do you do you?
Sing 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
Self-centered, though. Am I just going to say it?
We've established many a time that we are a little bit self-centered, but I think, in one of our first episodes, we talked about if you're not full of yourself, what the fuck are you full of? So go ahead and have a moment.
Well, okay, so I was having a little bit of a depressy day, and I was like, I just don't really have a lot going on. And then I thought about the fact that we have like amazing like listeners, and I was like, there's literally thousands of people that like me. That's what I thought of, and that's what made me feel better.
That's beautiful.
I was like, there's thousands of people. That really like me.
That fall in love with me every week.
So just letting you guys know, you're what got me through.
It's the fans.
What is that TikTok? What got you through at your lowest point? But then people are like, a spoonful of peanut butter. Did you ever have that as snacks?
A spoonful of peanut butter?
Yeah.
We know this. I'm really sensitive to textures, so I don't like the dryness. My mouth, it gets really overwhelmed. It's just too much. You know what I mean? And then I get a fear of, I'm not going to be able to breathe.
Right. What if Copper feels the same way? Do you give him peanut butter?
No.
Oh, okay.
Copper's my dog.
Copper's my fiance.
No, Copper is my dog. And he does not eat peanut butter. No.
Oh, all right.
He likes cheese. He likes string cheese. And he likes meats. More of a charcuterie
boy.
Yeah.
He nice like a cheese board.
He like a cheese board. Yeah.
Okay.
But he doesn't like veggies. I've tried. My other dog does like veggies.
Gotcha. And you know who else likes veggies?
MaryEllen Reider. We don't know that to be true.
But I assume.
But based on her glowing skin, my guess is a yes. If you didn't already guess, today on the podcast, we have MaryEllen Reider here to talk about pelvic floor health and kegels. Yes, that is how you pronounce it. We'll get into that in the episode.
At me. Yes.
Don't at me, bro.
Bruh.
Bruh.
I do feel weird saying kegel. I feel like I'm choking on the word, but
here's the thing. I've been saying kegel a lot on accident. Every single time my partner calls me out now.
Really?
He's like, isn't it kegel?
No,
because he heard us in the interview. Prick.
That's really rude.
You prick.
Also, he should have waited till the episode came out to like know for sure.
Right? Quiz me then, motherfucker.
Bitch.
I still have a few weeks to prepare at that point. But yeah, this is such an informative episode, but as always, super fun. Ties very into sex and pleasure, which is not really something that I expected.
No, me either. I am happy that I have an understanding about what the fuck a pelvic floor is now, but how much that health does help your orgasms.
Yes.
And your sex. And you need it. This is what makes it strong and so powerful.
And that's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's why we're here.
fucking
We
here.
want to learn how to have amazing sex.
And things that we wouldn't have thought of that help us have sex. Like, I'm so glad that we were able to touch on it.
Absolutely. In addition, MaryEllen is the co-director of a company called Yarlap, and Yarlap is a Kegel exercise device.
Which, who the fuck knew there was one?
Who knew? Who knew? So we get all into this in the episode, and then we're able to try it.
We were very fortunate enough to try it, and we're going to talk about that experience and also offer a discount code if it's something that interests you and you feel like you could really benefit from it.
Yeah, so stick around to the end of the episode to hear all of that.
All of our reviews. All of our reviews.
All of my reviews.
I had to add that in. Last word. Have to have it. That's mine. Anyway, so I guess we'll see you on the fucking other side.
Yep.
Yep.
The fucking other side.
So my name is MaryEllen Reider, and I am the co-founder of Yarlap, which is a pelvic floor muscle electrostimulation device that treats female urinary incontinence. So basically, it's just a very fancy way of saying created a device that helps do Kegel exercises for you.
Wow.
That's so cool.
That is so cool. And so is it pronounced kegel?
Yeah, so it's based off of the doctor who did all of the, exercising research, Dr. Kegel, and I actually got called out on it. The only reason I have ever said it like that, because I used to say Kegel, and I went to this sex conference back in 2016, and I was talking to this woman who discovered the G-spot. She was one of the women who discovered the G-spot, Dr. Beverly Whipple, and I was telling her all about the Yarlap, and I said, oh yeah, and it does the Kegels for you. And she pulled me aside and she said, if you're going to do this, you might want to pronounce it correctly and say Kegel. And I was like, This is the most embarrassing thing that has ever happened to me, besides like in kindergarten when I threw up and caught it in my hand.
Oh God.
At least you caught it.
Yeah, like they're forever ingrained in my brain. That's how you say it. And I think I'm like one of the only people who says it that way, but I can't, just because of like being so embarrassed by being called out by like the number one person in the world who knows about it is forever stuck with me.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Kegel it is.
Kegel it is.
Like bagel.
Yes.
On that note, I would love to back it up a little bit before we get into Kegels and talk about the pelvic floor, because I feel like that word is thrown around a lot and I know nothing. I know I should be doing Kegels and that's kind of it. So if we could start off with that would be wonderful.
Yeah. So I was like you, I had no idea what those muscles were. I would see them like every so often when it would be like, do this exercise to be fire in the bedroom. And I'd be like, click. I fell for that clickbait and would read it. And it would say something about the pelvic floor muscles. I skimmed past it because whatever, not into anatomy. And turns out that those muscles are actually incredibly important to your well-being, regardless of what you are. Every human has a pelvic floor muscle. So for women, it's extremely important because we go through things like pregnancy and delivery. And so that causes a lot of pressure within those muscle groups and they weaken. And so that's why we're constantly told to do those exercises. But your pelvic floor muscles, if you're a visual learner like I am, you can kind of think of it as a hammock. So they're strung together from around your pubic bone to the base of your spine to hold everything together, your bladder, your uterus, your visceral organs, and they hold it into place. It's kind of the foundation for it all. And those muscles can atrophy, they can weaken over time through a variety of different things. If you are active and you are a runner or you work out constantly and you're doing squats, for instance, that repetitive motion can cause pressure onto those pelvic floor muscles to weaken. So if you're not working to help strengthen them, you're giving them a lot of pressure to work with, and sometimes they get weak and they kind of sag. And when they sag, the bladder, the uterus, the visceral organs shift from their natural position and basically create like a pyramid, I guess, where everything falls onto your poor bladder. And when you laugh, sneeze, cough, sometimes you pee yourself, and your pelvic floor muscles can no longer hold it all into position and you pee yourself. So these muscles are really, really important to hold everything. And fun fact I didn't know until I started doing Yarlap is that your clitoris actually runs right along your pelvic floor muscles.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yes. So that hammock is really, really important.
Yeah.
That really puts it all into perspective.
It really does. That is so much different than what I was picturing. Because when we say pelvic floor, I think of it as something, horizontal through my body, like at the bottom of my uterus, by my vulva, something like around there. But I know everyone has a pelvic floor. Not everyone has a uterus or a vulva. So I was very interested to know what that encompasses. So it's everything around kind of your abdomen area.
Right. It's basically everything that holds those muscles into place. It wraps around your anus. It's included within your anus. So that's why there's something called fecal incontinence, which is you poo uncontrollably, like not uncontrollably, but like involuntarily.
More than you'd like to.
More than
so
you
it holds all
expected.
that together. It holds your urethra shut. It's really, really important because it is basically the base that holds it all together down there.
Oh, that sounds very important. I don't want to poo myself.
I've known a lot of dogs who would, like poop when they bark on accident.
Oh,
My family's always taken in really old dogs, so I think that was why. But I feel like that's a good example. Maybe it was their pelvic floor muscles.
Perhaps. So you said it also wraps towards the clitoris. So keeping this tight helps you sexually as well, right? So what are these benefits to keeping your pelvic floor tight sexually?
Yeah, so tight.
And is that the right word? Like,
way.
yeah, is tight the right word?
No, that's like a really good thing. I'm glad that you pointed it out, because sometimes people have too tight of a pelvic floor, and that falls into another area of pelvic floor dysfunction where sexual intercourse, sex is actually extremely painful because your muscles are so tight that basically having anything penetrated hurts. And some people say it feels like they're being stabbed. It's just this sheer blinding pain or discomfort in general, because those muscles, those pelvic floor muscles, are super, super tense, and they're really, really tight, and they're unable to relax. And so the pelvic floor muscle is weird because it can be loose or it can be way too tight. It's kind of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and you kind of have to just find it just right. And it's kind of finicky. But all in all, really, really important. And back to the clitoris, though, your clitoris is an iceberg. Mm-hmm. About 20% of it is visible in that clitoral bulb, and then the rest of it is underneath. And it can wrap around the inner part of your thigh. It can wrap around your anus. It's extremely large. I recommend everybody who's listening to this to go and Google what your clitoris actually looks like, because it's not at all what you think. Mm-hmm. It is nothing what you think it looks like. Kind of looks like a wishbone, but large. And so that's why some people get stimulated and reach orgasm when they do anal sex, and some people are just like, that is not my cup of tea at all. So it's crazy, and your clitoris runs along your pelvic floor muscles.
So if your pelvic floor muscles are really loose, how would that impact your sexual function or your ability to experience pleasure?
Right. So if you've had atrophy, sometimes there is a dull sensation because those muscles are really weak. That signal isn't really getting to the muscles that it needs to get to. And when you're doing a Kegel exercise, you are clenching the same muscles that are being clenched during orgasm. So if you remember back to your last orgasm, today, yesterday, or whatever, and you remember having almost like a pulse feeling of something being clenched and pulled up, that's your pelvic floor muscle.
Ooh. Okay.
And so when you're doing a Kegel exercise, that same muscle is being engaged. So when you're having an orgasm and you're having sex and you know how to do a Kegel properly, muscle memory kicks in and your body goes, hold up, I know how to do this, and I know how to do it correctly. I know how to do it really, really well, stronger, better, faster. And it kind of just takes over into muscle memory, and you have this mind-blowing orgasm. You have a really great response to the orgasm because those pelvic floor muscles are healthy, respirated, healthy blood flow, know what they're doing, and are positively being engaged.
Oh my God, that's such good motivation for Kegels, because I feel like in my mind, I've always thought of Kegels as this thing that I need to do for my future.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Starting a savings, investing, and doing my Kegels. It's like, I know this, I feel like it doesn't affect me now, but I know it will affect me in 20 years or whatever, what have you. But thinking about how it could literally affect me right now
your
is
orgasm
wild.
tomorrow. Yeah.
Because that's the motivation I need.
That's what you need. And so if I could jump back really quick, you said that there's a possibility of it being too tight and causing a lot of pain. How do you fix that? How would you remedy that? Is that do you stretch it? Do you roll it out? How would you help yourself if you feel like it's too tight?
So if you feel like your pelvic floor muscles are too tight, the best way is, and this is going to be such a privileged thing to say, is to go to your doctor and get that checked out, because they're the ones that have your medical history. So they're going to be able to do all the tests.
Right.
And one of the tests, which is super uncomfortable, is called the Oxford test, which is to stick your finger into the vagina and see if you can clench it. And that's actually also a way to see if you're doing the Kegel exercises properly, which is the beauty of the Yarlap, why we came up with it, because who has time to do that hundreds of times a day, and who has the privacy to do that? But if you do feel like, you have this pain and it is tightened and you can go to your doctor, instead of doing Kegel exercises, which clench your muscles, it's recommended that you do pelvic floor relaxation, the massage programs, because that helps release the tension down there. And again, that's almost equally as difficult as actually doing a Kegel exercise properly, because Kegel exercises are extremely hard to do on their own. And in the same vein, doing the pelvic floor relaxation exercises are just as difficult to do, because when you, and one of them, if you go to the National Association for Continence, they recommend actually deep breathing exercises. Because when you inhale, if you want to do that with me, like if you want to inhale and we can have like an awkward silence, your body kind of goes, okay, fine, exhale, everything relaxes, including your pelvic floor muscles. And so oftentimes when, you're starting off, they'll tell you to do those deep breathing exercises because they help almost second nature relax those muscles that are already really, really tense. But if you have that tense muscle, you don't want to be doing Kegel exercises because that's just going to clench an already clenched muscle, and that's not going to do anybody any good.
That's bringing up so many questions for me. First of all, how do your pelvic floor muscles become too tight? Like, is there something that you do lifestyle-wise that causes them to be that way? Can you be born with extra tight pelvic floor muscles? How does that work?
And it's almost easier to come up with like a list of how you wouldn't fall into pelvic floor dysfunction almost. It's kind of daunting, but when it can be psychological, that's what, sex therapists, they go through that and kind of unravel and unpack that, because sex is not just physical, but it's also mental as well. So when you do have this hypertone, hypertension, getting that to unpack is a psychological battle as well. And oftentimes it does come from that, from trauma or something, but it can also come with a lot of times athletes, especially gymnasts, have a hypertoned muscle because they have been instructed and it has been drilled into them. When they land, you tense and you tighten and you're clenched. When you land, you're as clenched as you could possibly be. And so then your muscles basically learn, and muscle memory kicks in to be basically clenched all the time. And then you have these athletes that have pelvic floor issues, but they shouldn't be doing Kegel exercises. They should be doing pelvic floor muscle relaxation because they have these super tight muscles. You could be born with it, or it could be pelvic floor dysfunction. It feels like sometimes as a woman we're set up for disaster, because so many things are kind of like thrown at us that cause these issues: trauma, pregnancy, childbirth, hormones, menopause, being active, not being active enough, weighing too much, weighing too little. And you basically have to fall within a very small area to have like the perfect pelvic floor. Otherwise you have to kind of work at it and maintain that tone, that perfect tone.
Okay. I don't know if you are necessarily the right person to ask about this, but if you are someone with a penis, how does too tight of a pelvic floor affect you then? Because we were talking about that if it's like a vulva, how it can really hurt with sex if it's going inside. But if you have a penis, do you know how that would affect them?
I don't know from like personal experience of what that feels like, but I know that for men, incontinence is very prevalent as well. It's not as prevalent as vulva havers, but it is still prevalent because that tone is still really, really important. And for men to do a Kegel, because I don't know, I'm not the person to ask for about hypertoned muscles within penises, but if they're like, how do I do a Kegel? I have a penis. Here's a fun thing. When you are able to kind of see your penis and engage it to go up and down and just move, you're doing a Kegel exercise.
Oh,
That's silly looking.
that's really funny because sometimes my partner will do that as a joke. Like there's like a ghost and I hate it. It's honestly so annoying when I'm trying to tell him something like important and I'm just trying to talk about life stuff and then I just see this thing in the corner of my eye. It's
like,
rude.
It's like jokes on you. You're actually helping your health.
Yeah, well, now I know.
Yeah.
Now I don't have to be upset. So that's good.
That's hilarious. Ugh.
I'm wondering, so, you know, you've said that you can't diagnose. I'm wondering if we can talk about or maybe clarify like the symptoms of loose pelvis muscles or loose pelvic floor muscles versus too tight pelvic floor muscles, just to kind of like, because I think the root of that question is like, how do you know if there is something wrong?
Right. So again, not a licensed healthcare professional, can't diagnose you, but a lot of the times they kind of overlap. So pelvic floor, like incontinence, this is my area, is, you know, the involuntary leakage of urine. And that can happen with too tight or too loose, too weak of a pelvic floor muscle. And if you pee and you don't mean to, when you laugh, sneeze, cough, or you have like a sudden need to go to the bathroom and you can't hold it, like it hits you. And you either are like, okay, I got 20 minutes, I got 15 minutes, or I got to go and I got to go right now. Those are all different types of incontinence, which come from pelvic floor dysfunction. Pelvic floor dysfunction is an umbrella term, and it can mean too tight or too weak of a pelvic floor muscle. Because again, it's really hard to figure out if you need to do the Kegel exercises or if you need to do the muscle relaxation programs, because every person is different. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's been through different things. And so what I would suggest doing is, you know, if you are peeing and you don't mean to be peeing, definitely go see somebody. If you are having painful sex should never be painful. Sex should never hurt you. And by that, I mean, it should never be like a sheer blinding, uncomfortable pain that you don't consent to. Go see your doctor and get that checked out and talk about the pelvic floor muscle, because I think that there is a gap in conversation where we don't talk about it because, one, we don't know it exists, or two, we think we're the only ones in the world that have it, when in reality, 1 in 3 women in the United States alone has some form of urinary incontinence. Wow. So you are not alone when you open up that conversation with the doctor. If you tell him, you know, I'm peeing myself, or sex is really, really uncomfortable, or I can't hold my pee, or I always feel like I'm really, really clenched, and sometimes when I sit down, I'm still clenched. Go talk to a doctor. I know that is a very privileged thing to say, to be able to go do that, but really they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to offer you a specific plan for you and your health, and you don't want to self-diagnose. I am very guilty of self-diagnosing, and then I end up going down like a rabbit hole of WebMD, and then I end up with like some weird disease that, you know, hasn't happened since like the 1800s. And I'm like, I've got it.
I'm the one.
Patient 0. I've got this. Don't do that. Don't, especially with your pelvic floor health, because it's often very easily remedied once you do have a plan in place. One other thing, because I'm on my soapbox right now, is that there is no such thing as a loose vagina.
Thank you. That was my next question. This is why
Yeah.
we have a business together, because we read each other's minds.
We're the same.
Yep.
Continue, please.
So that was like one of my things is during college, you know, people would make jokes and be like, oh, they got a loose vagina. Having too much sex causes your vagina to be loose, blah, blah, blah. And then now there, you know, there's like 29-year-old me who's standing on a box who's like, you know, shouting, there is no such thing as a loose vagina. Throwing a hot dog down a hallway is the rudest thing that you could possibly say.
Rudest fucking thing. God damn.
And it's all integrated with the tone of your pelvic floor muscles. So, you know, lack of pelvic floor tone could mean that you feel loose. That's often the case. And so that we have a lot of people who are postpartum, who have had kids, and they're like, it just feels different down there. And it's just weird and loose, and I don't know what to do, and I'm afraid I have a loose vagina. And like, I emailed them back so quickly. I'm like, first of all, you're great. You're fantastic. Your body just went through something amazing, but also there's no such thing as a loose vagina. So take that notion and like kick it out of the field. Like, it's gone, goodbye, no such thing. It's all about the tone of your pelvic floor muscles. So again, we're going back to the very beginning of make sure that you have the right tone. So if you feel loose or, you know, it just doesn't feel right down there, or, you know, you've had somebody make a very rude comment and you've taken it to heart, look into saying maybe if you need to have pelvic floor exercises, because that tone of that muscle keeps everything in place. And so once those muscles are toned, everything else is toned.
That's what I was going to ask. So the pelvic floor workouts, when you work that, it's keeping everything tight that way. It's not necessarily like strengthening your vaginal walls. It's like keeping everything in its place is basically what it's doing. Okay. Because I also thought, and we'll get into exactly what a kegel is, was that you are literally strengthening your vaginal walls. Like that superwoman down there. That's literally what I thought I was doing it for. So it's good to know.
Well, yeah, because like weights. Have you heard of those? Like the vaginal weights? Yeah. I was like, oh, so like weightlifting. Like same deal.
For her. When is this going to be in the Olympics?
Right. It's like, I remember I first read about those in 50 Shades of Grey. And I was like, what are these? Are these like real? And it turns out that there's like an entire empire based just like on those weights alone.
Wow.
But your vagina is the circular tube, and it is encompassed and surrounded by your pelvic floor muscles and everything else around there. So once those muscles are, again, being worked out, they're toned, tightened, everything else is kind of falling into place as well, because the surrounding muscles that are holding it into place and in position are also toned and well maintained as well.
Beautiful way to explain everything.
Yes. I guess I have a clarifying question then, because you've talked about not self-diagnosing, and then I've also heard this message, I feel like since I was in high school, is like everyone should be doing kegels. Like everyone should be doing kegels. So is that not the case, or?
No, not necessarily. That's a big myth. There are a lot of myths, I think, when it comes to wellness, especially vulvovaginal wellness. And that's one of them, is that a Kegel exercise is a one-size-fits-all exercise. Everybody can benefit from it. It's the greatest thing that ever happened since sliced bread. And it is, to an extent. But again, if you are one of the women who has a hypertoned pelvic floor muscle, don't do a Kegel, because that's not going to do anything for you. It might make things actually worse for you, because you're clenching something that's already super clenched. So we don't want to, overexert that and make it worse. And some people, again, when they read about it, they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. Well over 50% of women who try to do a Kegel exercise don't do them properly. They just do not do it properly. And it's because it's extremely hard to do. You have to hold and clench those muscles for like anywhere between 3 to 5 seconds. Hold it, relax, and do that almost like in quick succession. And you have to do hundreds a day to actually start getting the benefits. And if you are like me, you just rolled your eyes and said, that's way too much. I can't do it. That's
pass.
That's a hard pass.
I'll just poop myself and have pee problems for the rest of my life.
It is what it is.
It's what it is.
And I think that's where a lot of people are like, they hear that and they get overwhelmed and they're like, well, I guess it's just a natural part of aging. Goodbye.
Yes.
And
I'm going to age naturally.
Sign me up for aging naturally.
And so I think that a lot of people, when they hear Kegel exercises, they think, okay, I only have to do maybe 10 of them.
Right.
And 10 of them a week, and then that's it. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen 30 Rock, but
a few.
There's like a scene where she's crawling on the floor and she's like, what was even the point of doing my one push-up last year? And whenever somebody tells me, that they've done their Kegel exercises, but they only do, 3 or 5 a day, I'm like, then like there is no point. because you have to do way more than that to even reap a small amount of the benefits for having a toned pelvic floor muscle. And again, this is one of those things where I feel like women are kind of set up for disaster because it's really hard to do them. And a big indicator to see if you're doing them correctly is, again, to stick your finger into your vagina and see if you can clench it. But who has time to do that? Or who has like the want to do that?
Right. That's like carving out part of my day.
Yeah.
That's private.
That's a
private time.
job.
At least a part time.
And you would have to like lay down and you'd have to really think about it and like do the proper exercises, all while like looking at the timer on your phone, praying for it to like end. Because no one is having a good time. No one's having a good time from this. And so for when women are like, okay, I need to do the Kegel exercises because I've read it literally everywhere. They're all over the place. It might not work for you because the tone of your pelvic floor might not benefit from it. You might be doing it wrong, even if you're trying to do it your hardest, or you might be one of the lucky 50% or so, give or take, who are actually doing them properly. And you're maintaining that tone and you're having a great time going through the aging process and you aren't having any of the problems that we just joked about. But I think more often than not, it's just extremely hard to do those exercises.
Gosh, that was so funny when you mentioned the 30 rock thing, because when I think of Kegels, I'll be like, all right, quick 10, and then I'm good for the week. And then I won't remember for like months. So I totally have done that where I'm like, I did it yesterday. I did it last month. I did excellent Kegel work. And we'll sign that off for the rest of the year. So it's 100% true.
Oh, yeah. I was in that club too. It was literally when I started doing Yarlap, my dad and I co-founded it, and he asked me, if I wanted to join, because I had done international Women for Women. I had interned there, and I looked at him and I was like, I don't really think I want to do that because it's for like old women only. And I don't really want to talk about diapers. And that's just, I don't really want to talk about pee all the time. And he was like, okay, well, that's not true on
any account.
Yeah. And he was like, just do it. And I like fell into this rabbit hole, like this. I don't think I've fallen into a rabbit hole that deep since like I tried to figure out the John Bonet situation. And it was like hours upon hours where I was like, oh my gosh, like here's some new stuff about the pelvic floor that I didn't know. Oh my gosh, here's another part. And I had no idea that like it related to, your intestines and stuff. Like I had no idea. And I also had no idea that your uterus looked like a tiny little crown. Like I had no idea about any of this stuff until I started doing stuff with Yarlap, and I realized most women don't actually know anything about their pelvic floor until after they've had a child. And once they start peeing themselves after they've had the children, and kind of after everything has kind of gone and they need treatment instead of maintenance. And so that's kind of how Yarlap was born, was me essentially falling into a rabbit hole. That was very ugly, actually.
It was very ugly.
Well, I'd love to know more about the device. So can you talk a little bit about how it solves all of these issues of having to stick your finger in yourself for hours?
Yeah. So the Yarlap is an FDA cleared medical device. So we are registered with the FDA to treat female urinary incontinence. So when we were talking earlier about how to do it and making sure you're, using your finger, sticking it up your vagina, seeing if you can clench it. And we all rolled our eyes and said, no, I'd rather just pee myself forever. The Yarlap does all of that for you. So you insert it like a tampon, and then you turn it on and you find a comfort level that's comfortable for you. So it feels like for me, it feels like a firm handshake in the vagina. Some people butterflies. Some people are just like, no, MaryEllen, it feels like a muscle moving. And so that's what it does, is it works out your pelvic floor muscles in quick movement. So depending on the program, anywhere between 3 to 8 seconds, it will work the muscle, hold it for a few seconds, release it, and it'll do that for 20 minutes a day. So for 20 minutes a day, 3 to 5 days a week. You're doing everything that you are supposed to do as you have been instructed to do so by, your pelvic floor therapist, your sex therapist, your OBGYN, whomever, when they look at you and they're like, do your kegels. The Yarlap just does everything for you. And there are also pelvic floor relaxation programs, which makes the Yarlap extremely unique because, again, pelvic floor relaxation is just as important as clenching, and it's often overshadowed by the Kegel exercises. But the Yarlap does offer pelvic floor relaxation programs that teach your body to relax and really bring in that blood flow, let the muscles respirate and breathe. But the Yarlap essentially just does everything for you. You just sit there. Some people walk around with it. I am way too nervous to do that. Basically, because I don't even trust myself to stand on my own 2 feet sometimes. But yeah, you just sit there and 20 minutes, you're done.
Wow. Yeah, I was going to ask if you had to lay down. So how big is it?
Why did you just gesture like that?
I went
gestured
like this.
feet.
I was
like
just
literal
feet. Because literally when you described it, I was picturing like a wand, so I thought you could only lay down because it was one of those things you extend.
Like a lightsaber.
Correct. That's what was in my head. So I would love, or is it like small enough that
like a bullet vibrator?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's extremely small. It's about the size. It's a little bit thicker at the very top, but it's essentially the size of a tube of lipstick.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Does it
a lot different?
Is it like battery powered? Is it plugged in while it's in you?
Yeah, so it does use a 9-volt battery.
Into a wall.
Okay.
So it comes with a control unit that's attached to the PC stimulator, which is the part that actually goes inside of you.
Okay.
And it's battery operated. Nothing plugs into the wall or anything like that. And yeah, you insert it into the first 2 inches of your vagina, and then you turn it on, and you basically just let Yarlap do the rest.
That is amazing. What an invention, to help so many people. I feel like that's great. And is that so? If you're using your finger, is 2 inches about what you would do if you were doing a Kegel as well? If you were inserting your finger to feel it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of times it's called the Oxford test. What they'll do is they'll stick your urologist or your OB will actually stick a finger inside your vagina to see if you can clench it, and ask if you can clench. Mm-hmm. And if you can, they'll be able to notice because you'll be able to grasp the finger. If not, they know right off the bat that muscle has weakened.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for somebody that maybe isn't ready to invest in a device or saving up for it, what have you, is it possible to start doing Kegels on your own in any sort of effective way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yes. So if you've been told to do Kegel exercises, you want to do them and you're like, I want to do them next. I want to do them by myself, self-initiated. What you can do is, you can Google it, but there's so many different ways that pop up that you're like, I don't really know which of these is actually accurate. The National Foundation of Continence is a great resource. They have things that are not only for Kegel exercises, but also for pelvic floor relaxation exercises as well. But what you want to do is, for me, the easiest one is to pretend that you almost have a string attached from the top of your head, going up towards the top of your head from the base of your pelvic floor. So you have a piece of string that goes from your pelvic floor all the way to the top of your head, kind of like a marionette doll. Mm-hmm. And what you want to do is you can kind of pull that string up. And as you pull that string up, clench those muscles as a clench up. Because when you're doing a Kegel exercise properly, it isn't just a clench. It's a clench pull up feeling. It goes like this. Mm-hmm. And so you want to hold that. And once you do clench, you hold it for 3 to 5 seconds, whichever one you're able to do. And then you can release it for 3 to 5 seconds, then do it again. And you want to repeat that for, you can do reps of 10, reps of 20. I recommend doing them whenever you're at a stoplight, if you're able to do so and you're able to concentrate on that. That's a really great way to do it. Just do it throughout that red light if you're able to do that.
Okay. I was going to ask what the best position is to be in if you're going to do kegels. So you can kind of do it in however.
Any way you want. I think that a lot of the places, are recommending either laying down or sitting. I wouldn't recommend doing it, while you're out jogging or when you're out running, or you're taking your nightly walk or something like that. That's going to be a little too much. And I don't think you'll be able to engage those muscles properly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can sit down or lay down, relax, and really focus on them, and just kind of pretend that you're pulling that string up, holding it for a few seconds, releasing it for a few seconds, and do that for a couple of minutes. I think that would be really, really great for everybody to do, because I think keeping those muscles toned is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
I think that's a great visual. And for my own brain, where should you be feeling the kegel? Like, should you be feeling it in like your full abdomen? Because like I feel like when I do it, like I just did one.
I know I saw you like pop up a little bit.
I need to try it out.
Uh-huh.
I really just feel it like in my vagina. Like I don't really feel it anywhere else. Is that
it feels
right?
like my
Great.
vagina is sucking in.
Okay. Yeah.
That's great. So
Okay.
because a lot of people, what they end up doing is they initiate their rear end. So that you initiate their butt or their lower abs or their thighs. And if you're engaging any of those parts, you are not engaging your pelvic floor muscles entirely. I'm not saying that you're not engaging them, but you're not engaging them to the full benefit.
Okay.
Because your abs, your thighs, and your butt are not your pelvic floor muscles. Those are all different sets.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're kind of looking again, and the best way I've been able to describe it, and this might be because, sex, is when you've had an orgasm and you feel that intense pull, that's what you should be feeling.
Okay.
That movement, that up tuck, that pulse, that rhythm is kind of what you're looking for.
Okay. Interesting. And so if I were to reference Cardi B, she says to do she says kegel because that's what makes it rhyme. Kegel while it's inside. And I tried that for my best knowledge of what I thought a kegel is. One, pretty sure I sucked the condom right off the top, and it was really scary. It was just like,
based on your story, you did suck the condom. You're not
just like,
pretty sure you did.
I did, and it was, but the visual itself is so heinous. It was like, the condom was just like hanging out of me. So there's your TMI, and now you know me a little bit better. Anyway, so is doing a kegel during sex, is that safe? Is that something that we could do to like enhance our sexual pleasure, or is that something we shouldn't be using it for?
No, absolutely. So actually there's something called pompoir, Pompoir, pompoir. And it is the ability to massage the penis or whatever else is inside of you, using your pelvic floor muscles. And if you have control of those pelvic floor muscles, you're doing your exercises or you are able to relax and everything is toned and maintained down there and you have absolute control, you're actually able to essentially give a massage by doing Kegel exercises or whatever on the penis, and it stimulates it in a very pleasurable way. It's its own separate area of like sexual activities, that like different sexual positions. I don't know if it's a sex position, but it's like, it is an activity. It's called pompoir.
Wow.
That's incredible.
That is, because it's actually a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. So it was in one of our past episodes with Tayomi Morgan. She mentioned doing a Kegel in Cowgirl. And so I was like, oh, okay, I want to try that. And it was harder than I thought it was going to be. And so that's definitely where I think perfecting Kegels on your own first is great, because I was like, I've been doing this forever, I'm sure I can do it. But when there's something actually inside of you and you're trying to like do a Kegel, it was harder, and it felt like I was just like sucking in my stomach for the first half until I like had to hone in on what I was trying to do. And then it worked, and then it was fine. But I just didn't know if that was appropriate.
Oh yeah. Yes, pompoir, Pompoir, is essentially doing exactly what you just described. It is massaging and using that as a technique.
Okay.
That's so cool.
Using Kegels as a technique.
So we kind of mentioned weights, but I feel like I've heard of them in relation to kegels, but do you need to be using any sort of weight when you're
Yeah,
doing
you
kegels?
can if you would like.
Okay.
There's no shame in using any kind of tool to help better your vaginal wellness, your pelvic floor wellness, whatever it is down there. But you want to make sure that when you're actually using them, again, that you're using your pelvic floor muscles. A lot of times when you're doing that, you're using your rear end to hold them in because you're clenching the entire time. You're like, please don't fall out. Like, I don't want to be, if you're, back to the 50 Shades of Grey, you don't want to be in a hotel lobby and have metal weights fall out of your vagina.
Just shatter the floor.
God.
And so that's like a whole different situation is, yeah, you can use them, but again, make sure that you are engaging the correct set of muscles.
So is a yoni egg also a tool? Because I know you have one. I don't know if you've used it yet, but is that what's also used to strengthen your pelvic floor?
Yes, it is the same idea where you hold it in and engage your pelvic floor muscles to keep it in.
Okay.
I don't know why. When I was thinking of weights, I was thinking of some sort of lifting with that. Now it makes total sense that of course it would just be like keeping it in.
Yeah,
it would be holding it up. It's not like somehow I am like curling these weights.
Like a deadlift, but with my vagina.
Like I don't know why that's what I've been picturing this whole time.
I was going to ask exactly how those weights worked and kind of what they look like. Because I don't know.
So I think a lot of different businesses have a different design to them, but more often than not, they look like either eggs or they look like marbles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that again, with like the Yarlap, for instance, everything is medical grade material. When you're putting something into your vagina, you want to look at the material that is being used and make sure that everything is A-okay. And that you're cleaning it properly after every single use.
Yes.
And again, cannot emphasize this enough, that you are using the pelvic floor muscles. You're not using you're not using your abs to hold it in. You're not using your butt. You're not clenching your thighs together to keep it in. But you are using the muscles as they are intended to be used with those aids.
So just feeling it in the vagina.
Right. Holding it, keeping it in. And that's extremely difficult to do. I know that I'm making jokes, but keeping that in there while you're just standing there takes a lot of effort. It's hard and it does take focus.
That makes sense.
I think I've tried, while we were talking, I tried to do one kegel the way you said it, as in like holding it. And it's not the same type of tired as you feel with other muscles, but it feels so like, how do I do that again? That was a hard, it feels like those muscles aren't there anymore after I release it. I'm like, I can't do that again. So
I used them up.
Sounds like I might need the Yarlap is what this sounds like.
So is it ever too late or I guess too early to start doing kegels?
It might be too early. You kind of want to wait until you're about 18 to 21.
Okay.
Just because if you try to use it as earlier than that, not really recommended. But as to, can you be too old? No. It's like any other muscle. You want to really make sure that it's always maintained no matter what your age is. We actually have a few people who are 90 years old using the Yarlap. Because you're never too old to better your health, to work out any muscle. It's just like your brain. You want to make sure that it's always toned and sharp and always in use. And so, no, when it comes to age, there's no ceiling to that.
Love that. Because I feel like that's another myth that's like, oh, if you don't use it, you lose it and you'll never be able to get it back. So talking about being able to just strengthen it, it's just working out. It's just working out a muscle. So that's relieving. I don't want to put it off, but it makes me feel like I can.
It's nice to have all the options.
I am a procrastinator at heart. So if I happen to put it off.
But now we know that it can benefit us right now and make our orgasms.
Yeah. And I feel like you may have already answered this question. I just like to have it at the very end because to wrap up sex. So when you feel like you've been doing your kegels well and you've kept a good routine, can you expect to have just better orgasms or more intense orgasms with that pelvic floor strengthening?
Yes. So you can have a better response to the orgasm once you tone these pelvic floor muscles, because again, as you're doing a kegel, as you're doing these exercises, you create this muscle memory And when you engage in the orgasm, those muscles are the same ones that contract during orgasm. So your body automatically goes, yes, we know what we're doing, and we're going to do it better, faster, stronger. And you just have like this mind-blowing orgasm that you see about, in Cardi B songs, or you see them in, you read about them in books or movies or something like that. And I think for people who have lackluster orgasms, try doing something with your pelvic floor muscles, regardless if it's toning them in a way of kegels or if it's toning them in the form of relaxation. It is an integral part of your sexual intimacy wellness.
Oh my God. We learned so much. So if listeners want to continue learning, if they're interested in the Yarlap, where can they find more information?
You can check out our website at yarlap.com, or you can find us also on Instagram at yarlap_OTC. And if you have any questions, just email us, call us, DM us, whichever one is easiest for people. And we're happy to kind of help you out and get you started.
Woohoo!
Amazing.
We all should get started. Well, if it's right for your body.
Yes. And we're here.
And we've made it to the other side, have we not?
Have we not?
So Yarlap.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into it.
So MaryEllen described it. It's not very big. It's kind of like a cone-shaped tampon, I guess. It's the only but
like
rounded.
a little bit of a bulb at the
bulbous,
top.
like a binky.
Yes, that's what I was
It looks
thinking when
like
I
a
put it
binky.
in. Right.
Yeah.
So Cass and I have been fortunate enough to try it. MaryEllen sent us samples of the Yarlap, and I've been excited to go over this with you because I've had mixed reviews.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, you start then.
You want me to start? Okay. So, as you know, I had some trouble getting started. The machine itself, I've never really used an Easton machine by myself, so I didn't know how to turn it on. The directions are very thorough.
They're incredibly thorough.
But Emma
that was user
has
error.
a simple mind. Did have to FaceTime Cass to make sure everything was working properly. No coochie shots, but she did see my face when I initially started feeling it, and it was a very, very raw moment between you and I.
Yeah, very intimate.
So you cover it in lube first. Did you do that as well? The lube that it comes with?
Yes.
You know?
And then you put the binky in.
Then you put the binky in. I cork myself right at the end. And so on the instructions, it said turning it up to about 40 is when you really start to feel, and I do not know what the unit measurements are. It's 40 MA. RPMs, horsepower. So, but for me, I didn't really feel anything until about 50.
Okay.
And so initially it felt a little pinchy to me on the inside. But then, and I felt like it was the way that my pelvis was positioned. So I actually had to lift myself up a little bit and prop my hips up. And then it felt a lot more comfortable.
What position were you in?
I was laying down with my head just slightly up.
You're not supposed to.
Well, not completely laying down. Sorry. I was like this.
Okay.
Sitting up but leaned back a little bit farther.
Okay. So
whatever this angle creates.
Okay.
But even that just felt a little bit too pinchy for me. So I propped my hips up a little bit more. I did it for the 20 minutes. It was so interesting to feel my uterus contracting like that because it really did feel like a muscle. I think she described it in the episode. Some people experience the feeling a little bit different. And it did feel like just a muscle was moving on its own. And it was fun, but bizarre. And then, actually, I felt a little weird because towards the end, because you have it in there for about 20 minutes. That's how long the session is. And it was actually getting a little bit pleasurable.
Yes.
So I was like, am I turned on by this? No. Yes. And so I was kind of into it by the end. It was feeling pretty good. So after the 20 minutes, I took it out. The next day, I did have what felt like period cramp hangover. I had soreness in my uterus a little bit. I maybe just did abs the day before.
I think you might have had it up way too high.
When I was doing it in the moment, it didn't feel too high. It felt comfortable. It was fine. But the next day I did feel a little bit sore. So I was like, that's interesting. I did it again the following day and I put it in farther. And then it felt a lot more comfortable and I had it turned up the same amount and it was a lot less inside of
Okay.
me. And so that was a lot more comfortable, and it didn't feel, I didn't have any like soreness symptoms or like achiness the next day. And it was still very enjoyable, and I didn't feel it nearly as much as the day before.
Okay. So it sounds like just make sure you read the instructions very thoroughly. Make sure it's like in as deep as it needs to go, all of those kinds of things.
I think it was just not as deep as it needed to be initially. But overall, I have like 10 out of 10 reviews from it. I think it was so fun, and I'm really excited to keep working on my pelvic floor.
Yeah, I would also give it a 10 out of 10 review. Every time that I used it was like really seamless, really easy. It also, like in the episode, MaryEllen talked about like when you're having an orgasm and like feeling that muscle tense up, and I could feel the similarities between having an orgasm and using the Yarlap. And so that was really cool, and it was not uncomfortable at all. I didn't feel any like pinching or anything like that. I could tell there was something in me doing something, flexing a muscle, but it was overall a really pleasurable experience. I didn't like orgasm from it, but I could definitely see the similarities between that and an orgasm. And like, I think it also helped me get a better understanding of like where my pelvic floor is, what it actually feels like. And I talked about in the episode how I really didn't like the feeling of kegels, like at all.
Yeah.
It's just really uncomfortable for my body for some reason. And with this, it feels really different,
It does.
which one makes me think I was doing it totally wrong because I was. And two, it's different having something do it to me
Do it to
versus
you.
me like having to like do the whole thing. And I think it's like the mental aspect of it too. So I give it a 10 out of 10. I'm super excited to keep using it. I've been using it for a couple weeks. So
Yeah, it does feel so different. I was like moving my hand around my stomach and kind of my vulva area to like see if I could on the outside feel it, because on the inside it literally feels sucking up and then completely releasing. So I was like, can I feel it anywhere? It's like, am I like being absorbed into my body? And I couldn't really, but it was fun. It was like 5 seconds on. I did it on the first setting. I don't know what setting you use, but it was 5 seconds on, and then it felt like 5 or 6 seconds off.
yeah, so in the instruction manual, it talks about different programs and like different issues and which program to do for those issues. I was doing programs 5 and 6.
Okay.
So if you would like to try Yarlap, MaryEllen was kind enough to give us a coupon code for all of you to use. So you can use code DEWME, DEWME, for $35 off.
So you're freaking welcome.
You're freaking welcome.
Get working on that pelvic floor, biatch. Anyway, thank you so much to MaryEllen for being on the episode today. And thank you to our listeners for sticking around.
And if you have a couple of minutes, head on over to Apple Podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe to Honey Do Me. It means so much to us. And if this episode was helpful to you, please send it to somebody else that you also think it would be helpful for. Your mom,
Your mom.
your sister, your friend, anybody with a pelvic floor, which is anybody.
Yes,
That's
which is
anybody, regardless
anybody.
of gender.
Anybody and everybody.
Yeah, regardless of sex. So
And what emoji shall they leave if they leave us a review? Is there a binky?
is there a binky?
There's a bottle? No, there's
That's
not.
creepy. Go ahead and leave a star because
Yeah.
you're a star and so is your pelvic floor
So
for
is-
doing all it does for you.
Amen. We'll see you guys next week.
See you next
Bye.
week. Bye.